All right. Well, my next guest represents my good friends at the Epoch Times. By the way, they are some of my favorite folks, no question. Sam Dorman is the Washington correspondent covering politics and the courts for the Epoch Times. He's here to talk about these sanctuary city laws. The lawsuits are a battle between state and federal authorities, specifically the supremacy clause of the Constitution and the 10th Amendment. Supreme Court rulings are coming out. It's June. And so there are numerous SCOTUS rulings on the way that we need to talk about. Really appreciate you being here, Sam.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Always good to see the folks from the Epoch Times. Some of my favorites. Look, we've got 24 outstanding cases here coming from the court. I've got a whole list of them here. I've been watching for some of them: gender-affirming care for minors, nationwide injunctions, birthright citizenship. That's a big one. Sex and gender in school libraries, Obamacare preventative care panel, age verification for porn websites, and the list goes on and on and on. What cases are you watching that you find especially interesting?
Yeah, so you're talking about the gender case in Tennessee, which is called U.S. v. Scarametti, and that's about Tennessee's law attempt to ban uh, hormone therapy and so cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers for minors. And I think that's probably one of the most anticipated cases because it's obviously a hot button topic and it's going to impact how states can regulate this area of law, which has been growing in recent. This has been a growing practice in the country, and it's obviously really controversial when you're talking about minors. So there's constitutional questions about whether or not this actually falls under traditional sort of legal questions about sex-based discrimination, or if this is something else entirely because of the way that minors are affected. And then the other one that you mentioned, the porn case, where there's age verification procedures being required in Texas, I think that's also pretty big. In both of those cases, you're talking about the Supreme Court looking at the way that an appeals court reviewed the issue and potentially saying the appeals court has to go back and give the states more leeway in terms of what they can regulate. So it'll be interesting. In either case, they're going to probably they could change precedent in the way that the First Amendment and the 14th Amendment are applied to these issues, and so it could have long lasting impacts.
Yeah, so speaking of the 14th Amendment, birthright citizenship. There's that one.
Yes.
They're all kind of tied together because the 14th Amendment, look, it's not even a close argument. The 14th Amendment was never supposed to give people in the country illegally the right to have children and have those children become American citizens automatically. That was never the intent. The intent was to protect newly freed slaves from being targeted by their former owners, if you will, the former slave holders, right? That's what this was about. The idea that it was anything else, it's just dishonest, right or wrong.
Well, it's interesting. You're right because in terms of the 14th Amendment itself, you're right. It was passed during Reconstruction, and it's been kind of expanded to and cover all these different issues like abortion, birth control, all these different things that the court has ruled on. And so, like we said, Republicans are arguing basically that the 14th Amendment, although it says that anyone born within the jurisdiction of the United States has citizenship, the question is, what does jurisdiction actually include? And Republicans are saying, no, it's not just any child of an illegal immigrant. It has to be someone that owes allegiance to the country. Um, which is an interesting argument. It's not traditionally how the executive branch has interpreted this, but regardless, it's an interesting case because it is forcing the Supreme Court to go back. I think it's over a century to look at its decision in United States v. Wong Kim Ark, which is about a man who his parents were legally here, and they were questioning whether or not he could receive birthright citizenship. But one thing I do want to note is that besides that, the sort of the more substantive issues about birthright citizenship and what the 14th Amendment actually says, this case in particular is really interesting because it's challenging the nationwide scope of orders that judges issue
Correct.
to block Trump's agenda. So
Basically,
I don't.
it's challenging. It's challenging this idea that these 600 plus federal district judges can issue nationwide injunctions on spin the wheel, pick your topic. They don't care. They just
Right,
think
and
that
those have
right. I mean,
exploded.
that's where the real issue is in the crux of this one. So you could have two major issues addressed in a single ruling, correct?
Yeah, well, I don't think that the Supreme Court's going to say definitively whenever they release this decision that birthright citizenship is. They're not going to. they could say definitively that they think birthright citizenship is protected under the 14th Amendment for illegal immigrants, but it's not. It's probably not going to be a final ruling. What they do is they rule on the likelihood of success of the merits when they look at things like injunctions, and so they'll probably make some kind of tentative conclusion about that while saying, uh, while making a more firm conclusion about what judges' authority actually includes under Article 3 of the Constitution.
So there's the real question, Article 3. And look, it's pretty clear to me and to most people watching, we didn't have these injunctions until about 1960 something, the first one ever happened. And then all of a sudden, during George W. Bush's time, they started to go really fast, and now they're just out of control. These judges think they can issue nationwide injunction on anything. That's why you have a federal district judge in Louisiana ordering the Trump administration that they have to pay Harvard, Ivy League schools. I'm pretty sure there are no Ivy League schools in Louisiana. I checked the map, Sam. They're not there. So to say they're out of the lane is being polite, isn't it?
Well, it's it's an interesting question, and I think it goes beyond Article 3. Like Chuck Grassley was introducing a bill that was attempting to alter federal law. So there's a question of whether or not Congress actually controls the jurisdiction or whether it's Article 3. The Trump administration is focused on Article 3, and they did during oral arguments during this case. So they have exploded, though. I think that's a really important point, is that there was a Harvard Law Review study that talked about how these have increased in both under Biden and Trump, but mostly under Trump. And if you look at the judges who issue these, it's usually from the party opposite of the president that's trying to pass these policies.
Well, Sam, a lot of cases here because we only got to about 3 of the 24 outstanding. It is June, though. We could see him today, tomorrow. We could see him all week, next week, the week after that. Sam, you come back anytime for an update, and we'll be right here to talk about it, all right?
Sounds good. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Sam Dorman from the Epoch Times, the Washington correspondent covering the Supreme Court. And we covered for you right here as well. It's the Steve Gruber Show.